Hello, my name is Miriam Halahmy, and I write books for children and teens. And on June the 17th this year, I'm going to be talking about my book, Saving Hanno, for the Norfolk Day of Welcome. And this is when all the Norfolk schools and schools around the country start thinking about refugees and asylum seekers, which seems to be an awful lot in the news at the moment, and a lot of issues with children having to run away from the war in Ukraine. My book is about a refugee boy and his dog, but it's set in 1939. Rudy is a 9-year-old German boy. He lives in Frankfurt with his parents and his big sister Lottie and his dog Hanno, who's a beautiful little Dachshund dog, as you can see. But Rudy and his family are a Jewish family, a German Jewish family, and Hitler and the Nazi Party have taken over the country, and it's no longer safe for Jewish children in the country. So like many German Jewish parents, Rudy's parents say to Rudy and Lottie, "You're going to go on the train to England and live with a foster family." And Rudy says, "Well, I'm sorry, but Hanno and I, we don't want to go to England. We don't speak English and live with strangers." But they don't have a choice. Now, Hanno is taken to England and he has to go into quarantine for 6 months to make sure he doesn't bring any diseases with him from Germany. And we all know what that's like, because actually he's got to be in a little cage all by himself for 6 months, a bit like lockdown. And none of us enjoyed that. But after 6 months, Rudy has sort of begun to settle in England. He's learning a bit of English. He is living with a nice foster family and he's made some friends. But the war is approaching and the animals are no longer safe. The grown-ups have decided that they can't feed pets during the Second World War and that they'll all run about, particularly the dogs, biting people when the bombs fall. And they decide to put the animals down. And in fact, this story is partly inspired by the fact that 750,000 pets were put down in this country at the outbreak of the Second World War. And Rudy and his friends are desperate to save their pets' lives, and so they hide them away in a hut in the woods, which they call the emergency zoo. And Hanno's life has to be saved over and over again. And Rudy, who's only 9 years old, is going to have to be very brave in this book. Now, this is a story which some children in a school in Norfolk have already read with their teacher as a class book, and they've asked me some questions about the book, and they are 4G from Avenue Junior School. So I'm going to say what their questions are and answer them, because if you go on to read my book with your teacher in your class or yourself, you might have some questions like this as well. So Violet asks, where did you get the inspiration for Saving Hanno? Well, I had already written another book called The Emergency Zoo about the threat to the pets at the outbreak of the Second World War. And I found out that there was a German Jewish brother and sister who wrote to a charity in England asking them to pay for quarantine for their dog because they couldn't afford it and they were coming on the train to England. And we know from the records that the charity did pay for the quarantine. It was hundreds and hundreds of pounds by today's money. And so I thought, gosh, there was a dog associated with the Kindertransport, because 10,000 Jewish children were brought to England at that time on trains and went to live with foster parents. And we call it the Kindertransport. And today, when you see all those little faces on the buses coming out of Ukraine, we think about the Kindertransport, and they're going through the same thing again. A lot of children are being separated from their mums and dads. And Sunny asks, what do you enjoy about writing stories? My favourite thing is writing novels. I've written 10 novels and published 8 of them, and we've got some more looking for publishers now. And I love it when I'm right in the middle of writing a novel and I'm sort of immersed in the story, and all I think about is the character and what's going to happen next. And I'm daydreaming away and somebody's talking to me and I'm away with the fairies. I'm just thinking about my story. That's what I love about it the most. Felix asks, why did you choose to write about this era? And I have written 2 other books about the Second World War, all of which kind of came out of this story of finding out about the killing of the pets at the outbreak of the Second World War. The first book I wrote is called The Emergency Zoo, and Rudy's story first appears in there. And then I was asked to write Rudy's story as a separate book, and this book has come out in America and now in the UK. And it's illustrated by Karin Littlewood. Amazing pictures. I want to show you this one on the back. This is Rudy sitting on the train with his little suitcase. He's not allowed to bring very much with him. And there's the Nazi soldiers out the window. And he's still not safe, not until he leaves Germany and they cross the Dutch border. And then all the children go, no more Nazis, and we're safe now. But of course their parents are back in Nazi Germany and they're very worried about them. And Robin asks, what type of dog is Hanno, and do you have a pet dog? I love animals. I'm not very keen on zoos because I like to see animals in the wild. So I'm always looking out in the garden with my grandsons and we look at mini beasts and things. And I grew up with dogs, so I have a kind of affinity with dogs. Don't quite understand cats, but I'm very much with dogs. So Hanno is a little Dachshund dog, and he's about 2.5 years old. And my grandson, who also loves dogs, I had to buy him his own Hanno. And he was looking after my Hanno one day and he stuck plasters all over him, and we couldn't get this one off. So my Hanno has got a kind of long-term wound on him. And Noah asks, what's the best thing about being an author? Finishing the book and knowing that other people are going to read the story that I have loved and I can share it with them. I love writing books for my readers. And do you have any advice about being a writer? And I would say read. Now, I used to teach creative writing, and a lot of people don't really think they have to read a lot. You're not going to know how to write a book unless you read. And don't just read the books you love. I mean, you might love Harry Potter, you know, who doesn't? But you should read historical fiction and realistic fiction as well as fantasy, because that is how you will learn the task of being a writer. I really hope that I see you on the Norfolk Day of Welcome. I'm going to be running a workshop, and there's going to be some juicy writing exercises around saving Hanno and coming on the Kindertransport and thinking about refugees and asylum seekers today. And by picking your pen up and writing, you're helping people who are going through this right now. I look forward to meeting you all. Bye.